Today, our first reading is a story that many of us as Catholics and Christians have learned from when we were very, very young. The story of Adam and Eve and the fall in the garden, when God gave them this whole garden, the Garden of Eden, in which they could make their home and roam around in, and they could do and eat from any plant that they wished, except for that tree in the middle of the garden, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And he said, if you eat this, you shall die. And of course, the serpent, Satan, comes one day and says and tempts them, did God really tell you, if you eat this fruit, that you would die? He said, rather I tell you, if you eat this fruit, you will be as gods. You will be as God is. And God not only knows the difference between good and evil, but God chooses and wants to choose the good always. And so Adam and Eve thought that they could decide what was good and evil for themselves, and that's kind of what is the symbolic nature of the partaking of that apple. That they could be like gods. We can decide for ourselves what is right for us and what is wrong for us. We don't need any kind of outside source or God to tell us what is right and wrong. We can decide for ourselves. And that disease that we call original sin was passed down from original man or original humanity, from Adam and Eve on down, that we too have been affected by this clouding over of really what is good for us and what is not good for us. Because like Adam and Eve, we believe that we can, at some level, decide for ourselves what is good and evil. And I absolutely know that you guys, just like I do, we know the difference between right and wrong. I mean, we had great parents, great grandparents that, would swat us if we chose the wrong. And we learned from a young age the difference between right and wrong. And in truth, God planted that knowledge on our hearts. We know that if we get angry with someone, it is still and always wrong to hurt them or to get back at them or, God forbid, kill them. We know that that is the wrong thing to do. But where that cloudiness of original sin gets us, I think, most, is when we have to choose between two good things. Two good things. Because there are times when there is something that is for our good, and at the same time there is something that is better for us, thus making that thing that is just simply for our good the wrong thing to choose. And I'll give you an example. I love sleep. I love to sleep. And the only thing that gets me out of bed in the morning sometimes is my love for coffee, because I love coffee even more than sleep. But with this new Mass schedule, like going to St. Bridget's at 7:45 on Sunday mornings, there are days and Sunday mornings when it's just like, everything in my body says, just roll over and go back to sleep. Just roll over and go back to sleep. And in truth, as we know, sleep is a good thing. Without it, we die. Without sleep, we die. You know that. But in that moment, sleep is not a good thing for me. Rather, it is getting up for Mass. Because what Mass provides, and in celebrating the sacrament of the Eucharist, it supplies for us and me the supreme good of my life. And so while there's everything in me kind of clouding that judgment of what is truly best for me in that moment, namely original sin does that clouding, that we have to choose the better. And we can't always tell that. So Mass is an easy example, but we can't always tell what is the best thing for us at the time. And that is why we have to do what Adam and Eve did not do. We have to kind of lay down our rebellion, our rebelling from God, and turn back to Him. And once again utilize Him and make Him what He wants to be, the source of knowledge of good and evil in our life. That following Him, we know that through Him our happiness will be attained, our highest happiness, and the best good will be there for us, and he will lead us down that path. In a word, it's obedience. In a word, it is obedience. And that's a word that we as Americans don't really like all that much. I think part of it's because we have maybe an impoverished understanding of obedience. Obedience, I think for us as Americans, where it's freedom without responsibility in America, obedience means do what I tell you without question. Follow my orders and don't question them. But in truth, obedience stems from a Latin word that means to listen. To listen. And in this Lenten season, that's really what we ought to be. One aspect of our Lenten penance is to listen, to focus on God and to silence ourselves and to listen for him, who will steer us and direct us to what is our greatest good in the midst of so many choices, in the midst of overwhelming desire. And many desires are not good, even though they might be apparently good or appear to be good, like sleeping in, because we might need sleep. But there are times when sleeping in is a bad thing. This Lenten season, let us follow the example of Christ in the desert, who overcame the disobedience of Adam and Eve by being obedient to his heavenly Father, not being obedient to temptation and to the serpent, to Satan. So fill your lives, and not fill it, but make some time to listen to all those voices that we all have, not because we're crazy, but because we have desires and we have needs. And Satan is there too, tempting us always. But to listen for the voice of God, who will give us and show us and lead us to what is the greatest good that he has in store for us.